In the vast, silent expanse of the Arizona desert, there stands an old a.m. Ethan chuckled, a nervous, dry sound. Is this some kind of desert ghost story you tell all the guests? The manager didn't smile. His eyes, wide and fearful, locked onto Ethan's. His voice cracked as he spoke again. Room 27. It doesn't like visitors. Ethan shrugged it off, took the key, and headed out into the cool desert night. The door to room 27 was at the far end of the single-story building. As he unlocked it, a wave of stale, cold air hit him. The room smelled like dust, old carpet, and something else. Something colder, like a forgotten cellar. The bed was neatly made, but the pillow had a distinct indentation, a perfect hollow, as if someone had just lifted their head from it moments ago. He ran a hand over it. The fabric was cold. He flicked the switch for the bedside lamp. The bulb flared brightly for a second, then flickered and dimmed to a weak orange glow, casting long, dancing shadows across the room. A chill, unrelated to the air conditioning, ran down his spine. He decided to check the bathroom, just to ease his mind. It was small, tiled in a faded pink, and empty. But as he turned to leave, he caught his reflection in the mirror. And on its surface, written in the condensation from a shower that hadn't been run, was a single word: leave. His heart pounded. He wiped it away with the sleeve of his jacket. He watched, breathless, as the letters reappeared instantly. Ethan demanded, his voice tight with fear. "Who stayed here before me?" There was a long, heavy silence on the other end of the line. Ethan could hear the old man's ragged breathing. Finally, the manager whispered, his voice trembling. 10 years ago, a woman named Sarah checked into room 27. She was running from something. Or someone. She never checked out. Ethan's blood ran cold. What happened to her? The manager's voice was barely audible. Knock, knock. Then, a woman's voice, desperate and pleading. snap of bone. The hand recoiled, twitching, and then vanished back under the door. The room plunged into an impossible glacial cold, and on the door, new scratches began to appear, carved into the wood from the inside by an unseen force. Deep, shaking lines that formed 3 words: "See you tonight, at the first light of dawn." Ethan burst out of room 27 and ran to his car. He didn't bother checking out. He just threw the key on the ground and peeled out of the motel parking lot, leaving a cloud of dust in his wake. He drove for hours, not stopping until the sun was high in the sky and the Desert Rose Motel was a distant memory. But some things you can't run from. Because last night, safe in his own home, miles and miles away from that desolate stretch of highway, at exactly 3:07 a.m., he was jolted awake by 3 slow, heavy knocks on his bedroom door. Knock, 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 and a familiar whisper slithered through the wood. "You didn't say goodbye."